Those Rally Reds, they did it again. We'll tell you who looked great. We're going to tell you who played better. And we're going to tell you who might still have some work to do. We've got all that on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr, and my co-host, Stephen Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to talk some Reds with us. If you're an everydayer, thank you. You are what makes this show go. And if you're not, make sure that you become an everydayer by hitting that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app and right here on YouTube. Coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast, the Reds now have a shot at a series win in Philly. Let's go. We'll tell you how they get it done later on in today's show. Jonathan India continues to come up big for this team, and Andrew Abbott pitched marvelously for 4 1/3 out of the 5 1/3 innings he amassed on Monday. But we have to start with the top 2 performances of the night. Let's not even really mince words here. Spencer Steer, Alexis Diaz, the players, 2 guys that are on the short list of guys that the Reds need to step up in big situations. They proved that they are definitely, number 1, deserving of that, and number 2, going to step up for this team more often than they won't.
Yeah, the first guy we're going to talk about here, Jeff, is Spencer Steer. And I point back to our opening day roundtable that we did with Austin and that we did with Charlie, where we talked about most valuable player and most important player. And while I didn't pick Spencer Steer as the most valuable player on this team, I did say I felt that he was one of the most important players on this team, that if the Reds were going to be successful, they were going to need Spencer Steer to perform in big moments. They were going to need him to play multiple positions, and they were basically going to need him to be that steady workhorse out there playing 150 games. And this is exactly the kind of stuff I was talking about, what he went out and did last night. Spencer Steer, 2 for 5, 4 RBIs, 2 runs, grand slam in the top of the 10th inning that ultimately led to a Reds win. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for from Spencer Steer. And I'm excited. I don't think that he gets the credit that he deserves. I think it's very easy for him to get lost in the shuffle on this team when you've got such electric personalities like in guys like Elly De La Cruz. It's hard for Spencer Steer not to get caught in the shadows, but for at least a moment last night, he was front and center and the bright shining star of this offense.
And he took advantage of a great situation. I mean, Connor Brogdon, the relief pitcher for the Phillies, couldn't find the strike zone if you put it right in front of him. I mean, he was having the hardest time hitting the strike zone. I think at one point he threw 8 straight balls. And he had 2 walks. I mean, he loaded the bases super quickly. And the way that Spencer Steer was able to just take advantage of that situation says everything about him. And you calling him the most important player on this team, he is happy to take that.
It feels nice to do something positive for the team. And I like being in those big situations. Those are the spots I want to be in. I don't want to shy away from those moments. So to come up like that tonight was great, obviously, and just moving forward, keep doing that in those spots.
He wants the smoke. And when you saw he got all of that pitch, and they asked him even, and I didn't have this clip, but they asked the question, did you know it when you hit it? And he's like, I didn't want to assume, but it's like, dude, off the bat, I was running around my house. I was super excited. I was scaring the crap out of my puppy. My wife was mad at me, and I'm just like, it is the 10th inning, and it's a grand slam. I am not going to be quiet about this because that was a fantastic moment, and he came up big in the biggest of ways.
That's pretty on brand for him also to be, oh golly gee, shucks, I didn't want to show out. That's kind of how he's been since he got to Cincinnati, right? Like He came here and he adjusted and he put up a campaign worthy of a Rookie of the Year at least nod, and
Yeah.
You would have never known it by talking to him. He's very humble. He's just very quietly going about his business. And last night was no exception, but I could not be more excited for this young man and what he's done already and what we know he's going to continue to do for this team. We're going to talk a little bit later about Jonathan India and the importance that he has to this team and to this lineup. And if we're going to label Jonathan India player 1A for importance of driving the engine that's the Reds lineup right now, then Spencer Steer is going to be 1B just this much behind him.
No, I agree with that. And it's funny too. They asked him about, he got a little animated going around first base celebrating. I mean, come on, it's a grand slam in the 10th inning. What he did was super muted, but also what he did is probably the most we'll see. We're not going to see Will Benson reactions from Spencer Steer. That's just not who he is. But and I tweeted this out, and I got no response from you, by the way. I want to talk to you off air about this, but I tweeted out, Spencer Steer is the mashed potatoes, man. He is the thing that holds the plate together, what everybody wants, but nobody lists as their favorite food because the plate is better with him on it.
Yeah, I did see that. I had to go fix a snack when I saw it. It made me hungry. But listen, Jeff, Spencer Steer, he was not the only guy to show out last night in Philadelphia. Let's talk about your guy for a minute, because Alexis Diaz had put himself on a very, very short leash when you take how he finished 2023 and then combine it with how he began 2024. I was listening to Austin Elmore on Cincy 360 yesterday, who said Alexis gets one more chance. And if he pitches like that again, they need to replace him. I think that was the thought process that a lot of us were having. So to see how he came out and pitched last night, well, talk about your guy.
I heard everything from Austin, from the commenters, from some other folks that talk about Reds baseball, that he's done. They need to call up Tony Santillan. They need to move Hunter Green to closer. They need to, all this crazy stuff. One relief appearance does not a relief pitcher make. Emilio Pagan, by the way, has been proving that. He pitched pretty well in this game, a nice 2/3 innings where he shut the door after coming in for Andrew Abbott in the 6th inning. But Alexis Diaz, 5 outs, 14 pitches to get 5 outs. I know one of those was a pickoff. He caught I think it was Bryson Stott was leaning, trying to steal third, and he caught him easily. But then just 14 pitches for the other 4 outs, let's say, is still crazy efficient. And he got 2 strikeouts in those 4 outs. Like, that is Alexis Diaz. The slider that he dropped in, and I forget the guy that was at the plate, but the slider that he dropped in, and the dude looked back at the umpire like, seriously? But I don't think he was arguing. I think he was like, what am I supposed to do with that? That's in the strike zone? I got nothing for that. And that is who Alexis Diaz is. I am expecting more of the same. And by the way, love the fact that David Bell brought him in this high leverage spot that was not a save situation. So David Bell's not going to do the whole Dusty Baker thing. Like, if it ain't a save situation, we ain't going to bring him in. Like, I was so glad to see that.
And I think Alexis Diaz needed that. He really, his confidence needed that. The confidence of his teammates and the organization that they have in him needed that. We needed to see good Alexis Diaz, and he comes out, as you say, he pitched an inning and 2/3, got the 2 strikeouts along the way. Here's the stat you didn't say, and here's, I think, the most important part of it. He did not walk anybody. No free passes for anyone, and that more than anything else. No, that more than anything else is a dramatic improvement over how he looked the other day. And by the way, I know you love this statistic. He got the win.
Fun fact. Who's led the team in wins the last 2 seasons? Alexis Diaz. So here he goes. He's off back on his crusade to lead the team. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we got a starting pitcher do that this season. But no, I was so excited. I was pumping my fist, super excited, clapping my hand. They could have heard me from Philadelphia. Especially with as quiet as it was in the stadium, the way that the Reds pitching staff as a whole shut down that lineup that is just super expensive, lots of money spent on it. Alexis Diaz was just the icing on the cake for exactly how good the Reds pitching staff was on Monday night.
All right, Jeff, you said it up top. We'll say it again. The players that the Reds need to step up big in situations like this, they're going to be doing so. We can count
Yes.
on these guys, and we're going to see a lot more of this as the 2024 season plays out. Jonathan India has gone from a man on this team, Jeff, that was without a role, without a position, without a home, and he's gone from that to being the spark that is igniting the offense. We're going to be talking about the return of Red Leader next. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing television that provides access to millions of movies and television episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness to the NBA to MLB and lots more. Not to mention great news and entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking shows. If you want to watch it, they have it on there for you. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, just visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn the volume way down because of all that shouting? My Hunter Green rant notwithstanding, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming sports channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube for free on Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next episode of Locked On Reds, which overreaction from the first handful of games are we buying? We're going to discuss that moving forward. There's not many of the overreactions that have not already been disproven. This is a fun team, and they're getting it together, Jeff.
There's
And
one I've
speaking
got
of-
in mind. One in particular
Okay.
that I've got in mind. So you're not going to want to miss tomorrow's episode.
Well, speaking of guys that have gotten it together in a hurry, we talked a little bit about Jonathan India already. We've talked a little bit about Andrew Abbott leading up to this start. Let's start with Jonathan India, because 2 games, 2 rallies, 2 come from behind victories, both times sparked by Jonathan India. Both games, 2 days in a row now, he has done something to get things going. In last night's game, he is 1 for 3, 2 walks. The game before, he had probably the best at bat of his career, or at least one of the best at bats of his career, to set up the 2-run homer from Will Benson and then ultimately the CES walk-off. So Jonathan India has become that spark at the top of the Reds batting order. And it's very reminiscent of his Rookie of the Year campaign, the way that he's playing, the vibe that he's bringing. And that's why I'm saying, are we seeing the return of Red Leader?
I love it because, and you mentioned 2 games in a row, actually both rallies that the Reds had in their win over the Phillies, he was a part of. I mean, Bubba Thompson was already on base because of the ghost runner situation in the extras, but Jonathan India drew that first walk from Connor Brogdon there in that inning. He drew the walk from Christopher Sanchez in the 5th inning to get things going then. And sure, I know that there's some folks that are just like, well, why the heck didn't he slide in the 1st inning? I was one of those folks that was thinking that, but you know what? When you win, that stuff can get swept under the rug, and you're just like, you know what? Don't do it again. Because I'm pretty sure that immediately after, I mean, like as soon as he got tagged, he knew. He's just like, why the heck didn't I slide? Because if he slid, it's 1-0. Like that throw was beautiful, but it was high, so he slides on the tag. Anyway, that's enough about the not sliding thing, because everything else he did in this game was so fantastic. And to start off, I mean, the walk that he took against Sanchez was such that Spencer Steer, whenever he was asked about Christopher Sanchez, because he was dominant there for a few innings. He was just rolling fastball, changeup, fastball, changeup. Didn't matter if it was righty or lefty. He was mowing them down. And Spencer Steer talked about the importance of that walk that India drew.
Yeah, his fastball was moving a ton. It was moving late, and he had that changeup working too. Seems like he kind of got in a groove there in those middle innings, and I think John did a really good job with that at bat, drawing that walk, kind of getting our first guy on base in a couple innings and kind of disturbing him a little bit. So, yeah, he pitched a heck of a game tonight. He was on, and he was sitting on the corners, and really that changeup was really good in there.
I said it at the time. It's not the most important walk he's ever drawn, but it's up there.
Well, it's giving the Reds now an opportunity to do the thing that you're going to talk about here coming up in a few minutes, which is be in a position to win this series today.
Yeah.
That's amazing. This Philadelphia Phillies team is a good team, and it looked for a while there that Sanchez was going to continue to deal. And Jonathan India, in this case, really did become the great disruptor. He really did become the guy that forced a move into the bullpen, that forced the Phillies to make that first move that allowed the Reds to break through. We talk about this all the time, right, Jeff? If you can chase that starter, if you can get into the bullpen, things can happen, especially when you've got a starter that's cruising like Sanchez was. So credit to Jonathan India. We've been needled in the comment section, I guess would be a right way to put this, about our lack of enthusiasm for Jonathan India in the offseason. And it was never about Jonathan India personally, and it was really never about a lack of enthusiasm. We just didn't see where his spot was going to be. And as Dusty Baker always told us, these things take care of themselves, and they did. And Jonathan India is making the most of it. I am here for it. I hope he continues to just tear it up like he's tearing it up.
Yeah, and to be honest, the rallies, the both of the rallies that he started were all set up because the pitching was fantastic. The pitching was on point in this game. And to be quite honest with you, after the first inning, I wasn't so sure. I wasn't so sure that Andrew Abbott was going to have a good day. I mean, he gives up 2 runs in the first, and yeah, they weren't like, hard contacts.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. At the first inning there, were you, here we go. It's Andrew Abbott from September of 2023. Is that what you were thinking?
No,
tell the truth.
I was not there, but I'll say this. I was holding my breath a little bit. I was like, if you come out and do this in the second inning, then we might start talking about that, because the way that he looked, he had no command. He wasn't locating stuff, and he was giving up just the right amount of contact. Now, if you look at his numbers on Baseball Savant, he limited the hard contact, and he spoke about that. Like this whole start for him was about a couple of things, and I found it intriguing as to how he kind of rolled in an answer to any questions people might have about his spring training.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate, but like I said, it's going to happen. It's just about how you bounce back and just try to at least hold them right there. A high-powered offense, a lot of guys that can do a lot of damage. Just trying to execute pitches, try to induce early, weak contact, which I was able to do, and just go as long as I can for the bullpen. Yeah, there's a lot to build on. There's a lot to reflect. That can get better, of course. But it's just really good to see just the plan of the offseason and spring training kind of come into fruition today. Just getting inside on them, keeping them off balance, throwing off speed for strikes, like just able to do what I was trying to do in spring training. It means that I can do it in every start. I would say it's kind of tough. DJ does a really good job with me, at least kind of simplifying it, telling me like little cues to focus on. And during the game, I just try to stick to those. A couple of them are not going to be inside. I know that, but as long as I can get in there and establish that, then it's another weapon.
I think he really did a lot and said a lot there to make me feel a little bit more comfortable about what he's trying to do and what he's trying to accomplish. You're absolutely right. The command in the first inning versus the next 4 innings, I think a switch was flipped. It clearly, DJ got in his ear in the dugout in between innings, I think, and helped him dial it back in. And ultimately on the day, Jeff, this was a really good starting performance from Abbott as a whole. 5 in the 3rd innings, he gave up 3 hits, 2 runs in the first inning there. He did walk 2 guys, but he struck out 4. here's where I'm excited, because he started to recover on that command. He threw 90 total pitches in this game, Jeff. 57 of those got over for strikes after he was struggling in the first inning. So he did bring it back. He did dial it in. He did get it together. And I'm looking forward to see what the evolution of him looks like the next turn through the rotation, because I think that he was able to figure it out and adjust on the fly. And we talk about that all the time being one of the most important things a starting pitcher has to do as they're going through a start.
And to kind of put into perspective, because he said it and I said it too, the weak contact thing, according to Baseball Savant, league average for hitters last season was 88.2 miles per hour. He averaged 86.4. And to even put that into more perspective, Brent Suter was one of the best at limiting hard contact last year. He was at 84 miles an hour. So Andrew Abbott was closer to Brent Suter than he was to even just league average last season. And really during the offseason, we talked about some of our concerns with Abbott, and one of my concerns was the hard contact. He allowed a lot of hard contact, but in this game, he showed a change. He showed a bit of shift there. And I feel like if he can add that to what he did for the majority of last year, I get it. There were some folks that wanted to really hone in on his last handful of starts, last 6 or 7 starts there, and say that's the reason why the Reds aren't convinced that he deserves a rotation spot. I'm going to tell you that if he adds limiting hard contact to what he did in the first half of his 2023, there's nobody that deserves a rotation spot more than Andrew Abbott does. And I think that he should remain.
Yeah, you and I have been scratching our heads already with the narrative surrounding Andrew Abbott. And we've taken turns reminding each other that, well, the Reds have more information. Derek Johnson sees him every day. There must be something. But I'm really pleased with what I saw from Abbott last night. I think we can land in a spot where Nick Martinez moves into this bullpen, Lodolo drops into this rotation, and Abbott stays in Cincinnati. I'm not on board with the narrative of Andrew Abbott to Louisville. And if he has another start like this before Lodolo comes back, I think he cements his place in the rotation, at least in the near term.
No, I certainly think Abbott has more upside in the rotation than Martinez. Martinez is a solid starting pitcher, but I think he will be better served in the bullpen, kind of as a rotation, like a spot start guy, something like that. Abbott needs to stay. He absolutely needs to stay. But Abbott's efforts, India's efforts, Steer, Diaz, all of them set the Reds up for a potential series win. We're going to tell you how the Reds could do it coming up next. Whether you're at the ballpark or on your couch, you can get into all of the action on the diamond with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, you can keep an eye on everything that's going on, whether you're talking about pitching matchups, who's the home dog in the series or in the game, and so much more, because FanDuel has all of the ways to play this season. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's $200 to use on run lines, money lines, over-unders, and so much more. Of course, you can always combine prop bets like strikeouts, home runs, stolen bases, and more to increase your payout. And looking today, my favorite prop for the game today between the Reds and the Phillies, Elly De La Cruz, 8-1 to hit a homer at any point in the game. There's a righty on the mound. It's Spencer Turnbull. He gives up homers. Elly hasn't homered. It's a match made in heaven. 8-1. Take the odds today over at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on all the action right now on America's #1 sportsbook. Join the Locked On Reds insiders today. I've got a revamped new system, revamped new program for this season, and I want you to join in because I want you to become that friend in your friend group that everybody asks their Reds questions to. For $4.99 a month, you will become a smarter Reds fan and you'll get all the latest updates. Text Insider to 513-597-0944 and you'll get a free 14-day trial to see if you like it. Also, bookmark InsideTheReds.com. We're talking about the Reds here. We're writing about the Reds there. You can also join the Locked On Reds Discord group. A lot of great folks there. Link down in the description of today's episode. So many ways to get your Reds but of course daily here on the Locked On Reds podcast. All right, Steve, chance tonight, weather permitting. We're hearing lots of things about rain.
Well,
it's
going to be ugly out there, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is going to be an interesting bit. I think it probably evens out the pitching matchup. Like, I want to say that Graham Ashcraft is better than Spencer Turnbull, but when bad weather comes into play, every pitcher is the same, and it's just who can get the grip and who doesn't, and that's really the difference. But the Reds really have a shot here because Spencer Turnbull, there may be some who are just like, yeah, he once threw a no-hitter. Congrats. And anything else. And there's no point in his career that I've said that this guy's a really good pitcher. And the Tigers even said that. If the Tigers give up on you, you might not be that great. And last season, he only threw 7 games, had 7 starts. He didn't pitch in 2022 because of Tommy John. And the reason that he only had 7 starts last year, get this, according to him, whenever he signed on with the Phillies, he was talking about last season and how he was limited. It's because he had a neck injury and a cracked toenail.
You're making
so,
it up.
It's a quote that I got off of the Phillies or the Philadelphia news site. So, yeah.
Well, those pesky
I think
cracked
the Reds
toenails.
should get. I think they should score on this guy. I really should.
I like their odds in this. If they get this game in, this is a perfect alignment of the Phillies rotation in this situation, I think, because while we're going to get to have the Reds hitters face this guy and go out there against Spencer, who's not that great. We're running Graham Ashcraft out there, and I'm kind of excited to see Graham Ashcraft pitch this game because he's been sitting back now watching all of these things unfold. He's been watching the rallies. He's been watching the starting pitchers for, by and large, get it done. And I think he has just been chomping at the bit for his turn. You know, this is the guy that led the Reds rotations in starts last year. He led the Reds rotations in innings last year. And I think he is itching to get out there and do it again. I think he is ready and poised to say, here's Graham Ashcraft, and I am not a number 5 starter. I really expect that kind of performance from him in Philadelphia today.
Yeah, and you're talking about a dude that was the most efficient when it came to the rotation last year. He did face the Phillies. I looked this up earlier on in the season. It was April 15th of last year. He pitched 6 shutout innings against the Phillies in that game. Of course, that was during the time of good Graham. We had good Graham, then we had bad Graham, then we had good Graham, more good Graham than bad Graham. And I think that needs to be understood is that what he went through during the period where he was bad Graham is not something that's going to happen again. And it's something that he's grown from and he's learned from. And I'm very intrigued, not just at this start, but to see how he really takes a step forward this season. I felt like there were so many starts last year that I was just like, is Graham Ashcraft the best pitcher on this team? I think he has an argument at least for that. So the fact that he's pitching 5th, I think number 1, really it just has to do with how his off days worked with everybody else's. I don't think he's the 5th best starting pitcher by any stretch. And I don't necessarily believe that anybody is arguing that. It's just how he is set up in this this kind of procession throughout the season. If this is how the Reds can line guys up, If Graham Ashcraft is going against the 5th guy of every team, give me that matchup every single time. I don't care if it's the Dodgers. I don't care if it's the Diamondbacks. I think that Graham Ashcraft is better than every other number 5 starter in the league, and that's going to be a fantastic matchup moving forward. I think you're right. On the mound, they've got a really good shot here. Plus, and I buried the lead on this one, Spencer Turnbull, righty. So you're going to have the best version of the Reds on the field.
Yeah, and I think that the importance of that cannot be overstated. This team's best version of itself right now is when it's facing a right-handed pitcher. We're going to get Jake Fraley. We're going to get more Will Benton. We're going to get a lineup that has
Martini
Will Benton higher up in it. Martini will be back in there as the designated hitter. I think it's going to be happy hour all day long if we can get this game in.
Not stirred. Yeah, you might be stirred a little bit by the rain. And that's something, too. I've been talking with our Locked On Phillies host, Connor Thomas, about all this, and he's just like, the forecast ain't good, but the Phillies also share an off day on Thursday with the Reds. It's very likely that either tonight's game or tomorrow's game, tomorrow or Wednesday is supposed to be a day game. It's very likely that one of these games gets moved, and they don't necessarily have to play a doubleheader on Wednesday. So I could see that, maybe Thursday becomes the day if weather really does become a factor. I don't know. I'm not rooting for this, but I would love to see a scenario where Graham Ashcraft is out on the mound and he gets like a Lucas Sims moment where the weather's going crazy and the umpire's just like, come on, let's keep playing. I want to see what Graham does in that case, because I think Graham is like, baby, we ain't doing that. I'd love to see that reaction.
Yeah, that one might be a little bit different than the way Lucas handled it. And if you want to hear more about that story, get in our archives, because Lucas really did a great job of breaking that down. And right before spring training started, jump back, listen to that story. I think that was my favorite part. I think that was my favorite part of that interview, was just him giving
put a
the
link
insight.
up here. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
I'll put a link up here so you can click on that right away. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And we saw, Nick Castellanos, he hit a couple of long fly balls that made me sweat a little bit yesterday. And both of them were Oppo tacos, like just getting to the warning tracks. So I'm hoping that Ashcraft kind of steers away from him. Bryce Harper, it felt, I don't know what you were thinking there in the 10th inning, in the bottom of the 10th inning with two guys on, and he's the tying run at the plate. Like, he's done that plenty of times. And the way that TJ Antone, we didn't even talk about TJ Antone, by the way, in our solid performers. Like, I'm not saying that he pitched amazingly, but we saw him kind of dial it in. Like, his first couple of hitters, he was all over the place. And don't get me wrong, he was no Ricky Karcher. Shout out to the best pitch graph that ever existed like that. He was no this.
Oh, you still have that. That's amazing.
Oh, I'm never going to get rid of that. If you were watching on YouTube, you just got to see the Ricky Karcher pitch graph again. But he was kind of wild a little bit. The curveball was not being located well. And then 2 batters in, 3 batters in, 4 batters in, he started hitting his spots. This could be something.
Yeah, he wasn't as sharp as we need him to be. He got better throughout the appearance. But here, if you're going to look for a positive takeaway, when he did miss, when they did hit what he was throwing up there, soft, weak contact, nothing was going anywhere. So even though it wasn't doing exactly what he wanted it to do, they did not tee off on him. And I think one more outing, I think he needs one more outing to turn a corner. And then I think he'll get to be where we thought he was going to be. The question is, how much time does he have to get right before somebody comes back and the Reds are going to be forced to make a decision? So if he's going to turn that corner, I think he has to do it in his next appearance.
Yeah, I think he's probably only got a week before he can kind of prove that. But it's interesting. He came up big in that way. The fact that Alexis Diaz pitched multiple and more than one inning. The bullpen has a couple of fresh dudes that they're going to be able to throw out there tonight on top of Graham Ashcraft, as long as weather permits. That we'll keep saying that. But that is where we are going to end. Steve, take us away.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen every day. Everydayers coming up tomorrow. We're going to dig into those outrageous reactions to the start of the season. What still remains? What holds true? We're also going to break down what we hope is an uninterrupted series win for the Cincinnati Reds in Philadelphia. We'll have all that for you right here, because we are going to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
Steve, you seen Dune 2 yet?
I did. It's very good.
I think I might go see it again.